Hi, in this video, I'm going to share about connecting the dots, a guide to primary 4 to 6 mathematics. As a parent, I've been through the same journey as you. We are just busy trying to catch up or trying to stay ahead of what is being taught at school. We are seeing whole number, fraction, ratio, model, triangle, circle as a separate topics. The questions looks the same, but yet they are different. As we coach our children, we are not able to see the connection between the topics, and hence it becomes challenge to know what they know and what they do not know. So I hope with this video, I'm able to provide you a big picture of the mathematics syllabus. First, as a disclaimer, I am just a parent like you, okay? I'm not an educator nor I'm a trained teacher. So the material in this video is purely based on my own interpretation of my own source document, which I may be wrong, okay? But I believe most of it should be correct, okay? So where is my source coming from? Okay, so basically, I went to the WMOE website. There is a primary school subjects and syllabus, and mathematics is actually one of them. Okay, so I downloaded the document and I read it, and I basically extracted the key points that I think it provides a very good overview of what the mathematics syllabus between P4, P5, and P6. Okay. So based on the document, I read through and I summarized them into 10 main topics. They are whole number, fraction, decimal, percentage, rate, ratio, geometry, area, volume and parameters, algebra, and the last one is statistics. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through every single topic, and I'm going to show you what they are teaching in P4, P5, and P6. Okay, we start with whole number. So in whole number, according to the syllabus, the student will learn up to 100,000. The number they are able to handle up to 100,000. They are able to compare and ordering the numbers, which means that if they say a range in ascending order or descending order, or which one is bigger, which one is smaller, student is able to do it. They are able to do patterns in number sequence. So for those questions that they will show you 1, 3, 5, 7, then they ask you what is the next number or the 10 number. So those are the number sequence. Okay, so they are also must be able to know how to find the factors and the multiples. So there in a lot of the model question, you realize that always says that find the lowest common multiplier or find the lowest factors and so on. So they must be able to do that for two numbers. They also learn the four operation, which is subtract, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So in this case, for multiplication and division, they are able to handle up to 4 digits by 1 digit or 3 digit by 2 digits. Okay. For primary 5, it's actually the same, except that now the numbers actually increases to 10 millions. That means it becomes a very big number, and they have no issue handle it. Okay. Then for the operation, okay, they must be able to do multiplication and division of 10, 100, and 1000, okay, and their multiple without using calculators. So for example, they take 100 divided by 10, they straight away know that it's actually 10, the answer. Okay, so they should be able to do it without using calculator. And the use of brackets and order operation. That means if 3 bracket, 2 plus 5, close bracket, then the 2 plus 5 must be do first before you multiply by 3. Okay, so in primary 6, it doesn't cover all this, so this whole number will complete by P5. Okay, of course, the PSLE syllabus will cover everything. Next, fraction. So for fraction, you will go into mixed number and improper fraction. So mixed number means 2.5. Okay, improper fraction means that you have 7/3. Okay, then student must be able to do fraction of a set. That means 3/4 of something, half of something. Okay, they must be able to handle how to add and subtract fraction. Okay, for until denominator that is not more than 12. Okay, so they should be able to do things like 1/6 plus 1/6 or 1/6 plus 1/7. Okay, next, by primary 5 they will then go into the division. Okay, they divide the whole number by a whole number with a quotient as a fraction. So for example, they can take 7 divide by 3. Okay, then it will be 2 and 1/3. Okay, so there's a quotient as a fraction. They are able to express fraction as a decimal. So for example, 1/5 is equal to 0.2. Okay, similarly, they expect to do able to do addition, subtraction, and multiplication of fraction. Okay, so if you notice there's no division. Why there's no division? Because in fraction, uh, for division you basically flip it and become a multiplication itself. Okay, by primary 6, okay, they will divide a proper fraction by a whole number without using calculator, and dividing a whole number of proper fraction with another proper fraction without calculator as well. So which means that they can do things like half divide by 4 without using a calculator. Okay, so this is under fraction. So now you can see that actually the connection of things, they build out the fundamental in P4, then they increase the difficulty in P5, then finally they increase the difficulty in P6. Okay, so it's actually the difficulty is actually scaffold. Okay, for decimal, okay, they are looking at up to, for primary 4 it's up to 3 decimal place. So same like whole number, you are able to compare and you're able to arrange whether which is bigger and which is smaller. So if you notice there's some sort of question that 0.1, 0.01, 0.5, and so ask you to arrange which is the bigger and which is the smaller number. So these are the type of question. You are able to express fraction as a decimal when the denominator is a fraction of factor of 10 or 100. So if you got 3/10, you must be able to know that it's actually equal to 0.3. Okay, then you have rounding of decimal. So if you got 3.94, you can say that it's 3.9. You got 3.96, you can say that it's 3.96. So it's already more than 5, so you can say that it's actually 4. Okay, so they must be able to do rounding of decimal. So in P4 they learn addition and subtraction up to 2 decimal places, and for multiplication is 2 decimal places by 1 digit whole number. So which means that it can be 2.2 multiplied by 3. Okay, then for divide, it's a whole number divide with another whole number, but in this case with a quotient. Okay, which means that you can do 5 divided by 3. So there's some quotient in the answer itself. Okay, by P5, they will then move on to multiplication at decimal point up to 3 decimal places. So just now was 2 decimal places in 3P4. So by P5, they will go up to 3 decimal places. Okay, and same thing, they have to do it without using calculator. Okay, if they do it by multiply or divide by 10, 100 or 1000. Okay, then the other part of the decimal that they will learn is also converting of unit, measurement unit. So in the question, they will have things like kilometer and meter, or meter to centimeter, kilogram to gram, or liter to milliliter. Okay, the reason is that if you convert all these unit, you must be able to do this way or the other way around. So which means that if you are talking about 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeter, or you're talking about 1 centimeter is equal to 0.01 meter, and so on. Okay, so same thing as whole number. These two topics, decimal, will actually cover between P4 and P5 itself. Okay. Next is percentage. So percentage was started off with P5. Okay, so in P4 they don't cover percentage. P5 they will start to cover percentage. So the percentage is basically expressing a part of whole as a percentage. So for example, they say there's 100 person in the class and 10 of them are boys. So it's 10 out of 100 is actually 10%. Okay. So then the other one is finding a percentage from the part of the whole. So it's how much is the percentage of boys or the percentage of girls and so on in the class. They also learn about GST as well as calculation of annual interest as well as discount. So when it says that a pair of shoe costs $100 and there's a discount of 10%, so then you know that the shoe will actually cost only $90. Okay. By P6 it's actually the other way around. By P6 finding the whole given the parts and the percentage. So which means that in this case they will tell you things like, okay, the shoe after 10% discount is $90. What is the original price? So now you work backward. Okay, so in this case the original price will be $100. Okay, so they also ask you to compare percentage increases or decreases. If this thing increased by 5%, in this case decreased by 5%, and so on. So that is covered in P5 and P6. Topic number 5 is actually ratio. So under the new syllabus, P4 and P5 they don't touch on ratio. Ratio will start on P6. Okay, so in ratio they basically teach you the notation and the representation. So the ratio of A is to B or A is to B is to C. Okay, you are able to divide the quantity in a given ratio. Okay, for example, you got 50-50, then you'll be 1:1 and so on. Okay, then you're finding the ratio of 2 or 3 given quantity. So they basically ask you find how many is A, how many is B, how many is C, and so on, and find the missing items in the pair of equivalent ratio, which means that you have A is to B and B is to C. Then you find, what is the relationship between A is to C and so on. Okay, then also the relationship between fraction and ratio. Okay, so based on these first 5 topics, what does it mean to you and your child in terms of the mathematics, okay, syllabus? So let's take a look. I created an example. Okay, so I have this model here. Okay, the model is a boy and a girl. So there's 3 units of boys and 1 unit of girl. So I repeat, it's 3 units of boy and 1 unit of girl. So when we are talking about whole number, the question can be, there are 3 times as many boys as girls in the class. So this is how you draw the model. Okay. For the same model, I can, because the students are now taught in fraction, the question can now change to 3/4 of the class are boys and the rest are girls. So which means that out of the 4 units, 3 units are boy and there's 1 unit of girl. So you notice that these two are actually exactly the same question in terms of the representation. It's just that one is phrased in whole number, the other one is phrased in fraction. So by the time they reach P6, when they learn about ratio, for the same question, they can now say that the ratio of boys and girls in the class is 3:1. So it's exactly the same as saying that there are 3 times as many boys as girls in the class. So now if you understand this part, you see that they are all talking about the same thing. It's just another way of representing it, whether you're representing it in ratio, fraction, or whole number. And of course, the last part is percentage. So 75% of the people in the class are boys and the rest are girls. So it's 75%, we are talking about 3/4, because 75 divided by 100, you can divide you become 3/4. So it's end up also the same picture. Okay, so that's the reason why when you see the model question that was being asked, the problem sum that's being asked, sometimes you realize that the ratio question, the percentage question, the fraction question, when you start to draw the model, you end up noticing that the model actually look the same, and the way to solve it is exactly the same. But to you and to your children, it could be seen as a different topic. Actually, if you understand model and understand how it's being drawn, actually they are the same thing, and the way of solving it is exactly the same. So I hope that helps in this part. Okay, next I'm going to move on to topic number 6, geometry. So in geometry, um, basically they are in P4 they learn how to draw and measure angle. So if you look at PSLE, um, I think it's paper 2, paper 1 booklet B, they do ask you to draw, or they ask you to measure certain angle. Okay, then rectangle, they learn about rectangle and square, so they learn about the properties of rectangle and square. Okay, excluding the diagonal property. So if you have a line that draw across diagonally, that they don't teach you this because that will end up as a triangle. So they only teach you the property of rectangle and square, which means that the internal angle of a square is 90 degrees, for example, and the sum of the internal angle is actually 360 degrees. Okay, so for square, the four sides will be the same. For rectangle, the two lengths are the same, the two breadths are the same. Okay, so another topic is actually the line of symmetry. They will draw certain diagram and ask you where you can cut the line. So in this case, if this is a rectangle, you cut it straight away here. Yes, this is a symmetric figure. You cut it here, it's also a symmetric figure. Okay, and the next part you learn is what is nets. Nets is basically foldings of objects together. I will show you an example later on. Okay, so this requires some sorts of the kids able to visualize how the final object will look like when the so-called the item is being folded. Okay, in P5 they will continue to learn about angle. Just now they learned how to draw and measure. Now they learn things like angle on the straight line is 180 degrees, angle at a point is 360 degrees, and the vertical opposite angles are equal to each other. Okay, so they will learn things like that, and that's where they start off with triangle as well. So you learn things like what is isosceles triangle, equilateral triangle, and right angle triangle. Isosceles means two sides the same, equilateral means three sides the same, right angle triangle means at one end is actually a right angle itself. Okay, then they will be given some calculation for them to find out if I give you angle A and angle B, what is angle C, and so on. But if it's isosceles triangle, they may give you one of the angle and ask you to find the other, basically to test whether you know and understand the concept. They will move on to the more complicated diagram, parallelogram, rhombus, and trapezium. Okay, basically you learn about the properties. For example, rhombus, the four sides are exactly the same. Parallelogram, okay, so for example, the two length is actually parallel to each other, and the two breadth so-called is parallel to each other. Then same for trapezium, two of the line is actually parallel to each other, the other two is not. Okay, so you are supposed to understand all these properties, because without understanding the properties of parallelogram, rhombus, and trapezium, you will not be able to solve the question. So you learn the fundamentals: square, rectangles, triangles, parallelogram, rhombus, and so on. By P6, basically what they are doing is that they just combine everything together and give you a diagram that comprises of triangle and rectangle and so on, and start asking you to find the angles. Okay, so that is how they build up the foundation. So if you don't understand your P4 and P5 well, you will have a challenge doing your P6, because P6 is actually the combination of what you learn in P5 and P4 itself. Okay, so for you to visualize, for those who are not familiar with all the mathematical terms, I created something very simple. So for P4, you learn things like, square and rectangle. You learn that the four sides are the same. The angle is 90 degrees. Rectangle is A and A here, B and B here. the angle. So this is nets. Okay, net is basically they give you something like that, and they say these are folding lines. Okay, and you fold, and they will ask you things like after you fold, is the object is a cube or it's not a cube. Okay, so you need to do a little bit of visualize and imagination. If you cannot, one of the way to learn it is actually to cut it out and fold it, and after you do a few times, you will see the trick of doing it. Okay. Then in P5, you learn things like angle not straight line. This is 180 degrees. So if you have another line here, these two angles add up will still 180 degrees. You learn about opposite, vertically opposite angles. So this one and this one is the same. This one is the same. You learn about all the different shapes: triangle, trapezium, parallelogram, and rhombus. Okay. So rhombus is basically the four sides are the same. Then in by P6, basically what they do is they just whack everything into a bigger diagram. So what I hear is I have a parallelogram I draw here. I move a right angle triangle here, and I draw a line here to form another triangle. So the question may give you a certain angle and a certain angle here and ask you to find the rest. Okay, so this is geometry, how they build out the foundation for you in P4, P5, and P6. Okay. Next, topic 7. Okay, we are going to talk about area, volumes, and parameters. Okay, so in P4, same thing. Just now in geometry, you learn about rectangle and square. So the same thing in P4 for area, volume, and parameters. You learn about rectangles and square. Okay, so and you also have complex figure that is made up of only rectangles and square. So they may stack some rectangle together or rectangle and square together and ask you to find what is the total area of this figure, what is the parameter of this figure, and so on. Okay. So by P5, what they did is that now P5 is the time where you learn everything about triangle. So you learn about the parameters, you learn about the area, and so on. Okay. You also now you combine the triangle together with composite figures of rectangle and square. So the question will stack three of them together and ask you to find the total area, the total parameters, and so on. You also learn about cubes and cuboids, which means that you will start seeing questions like there's a tank with a base of 20 by 20 and a height of 20. What is the volume of the tank? Or there's a tap, there's water inside, inside this tank. When you turn on the tap, okay, and by the time you fill up the 10 centimeter of height, what is the volume of the water in the tank, and so on. Okay, then you need to learn to understand between the relationship between liter or milliliter and centimeter cube. Okay, so if you don't understand the relationship between liter, milliliter, and centimeter cube, then you are not able to even solve the question. Okay, then in P6 you learn about circle. So in P4 and P5 you don't touch circle. In P6 you learn about circle. You learn about circle, and of course once you start to learn about circle, you have things like semicircle, quarter circle, and you start to combine everything together with square, rectangle, which you learn in P4, and triangle that you learn in P5. Same thing, you also touch cube and cuboid, but this time round was the other way around. This time round they give you the volume, they ask you to find the height, and so on. So remember here is they give you the length, the breadth, and the height. They ask you to find the volume. This is the other way around. Okay, or they give you the volume and the height. They ask you to find the area of the base. Okay, or to find the area of on the side, and so on. So this is basically the other way around. And you also learn the use of square root and cube root. Okay, so this is area, volume, and parameter. Similarly, I created some simple example for you. So in P4 you learn square, rectangle, and you often see this type of question that was being asked. Okay, they can put two square and a rectangle together, and they ask you to find the area of this figure or find the parameters of this figure. So in P5 they start putting rectangle and triangle all into one shape and ask you find the unshaded area. So basically you find the rectangle, you minus the triangle, you get this white color unshaded area. Then you learn about cuboid, which actually the tank itself. Okay, They fill out the water, what is the height, and so on. Then in P6, basically now you learn about circle. So that's where you start to see circle coming in, circle, quarter circle, full circle, semicircle, and so on, combining with, of course, triangle, rectangle, and so on. You will see such questions start to appear. Okay, so this is how they build up the foundation for area, volume, and perimeter from P4, P5 to P6. Okay. Topic number 8. Topic number 8 is basically the rate. The rate, you learn it in P5. So basically they will show you the rate is actually the amount of quantity per unit of another quantity. So it's basically the most typical question will be, I on a tap and the tap runs 5, the flow of the water is 5 milliliter per second. So in 1 minute, how much water are there in the tank? So basically you take 5 multiplied by 60. Okay, or they give you to say that, oh, it takes 1 hour to fill up this tank, find the rate. So the other way around. Okay, it take 1 hour to fill up the tank, so you need to know the volume. Then from the volume you divide by the time, you get back the rate. Okay, or they will say things like, okay, John takes 1 hour to paint a wall. Okay, and Peter takes another hour to also 1 hour to paint the wall. If two of them paint the wall together, the same wall together, how much time will it take? So you must be able to solve this type of problem. That will cover in P5. So it's actually a small little topic that will be taught in P5 itself, and in P6 they will just test it together in the PSLE itself. Okay. Topic number 9, okay, algebra. Algebra will basically cover in P6 itself. P4 and P5 you will not touch on algebra, okay, but actually the students are more or less a little bit exposed to algebra because of the model. But in P4 and P6 itself, there's actually a topics on algebra itself. So basically you use letter to represent an unknown number. You can use x and y, a and b, and so on, and you just simplify some linear expression excluding bracket. So you can have 2a plus b equal to 3 and so on. So it's just a very simple. Then they say that if a is equal to 2 and b is equal to 3, what is 2a plus b? Something like that. Then ask you to find out. Okay. Then the last topic is called statistic. So statistic in P4, it talks about line, graph, pie chart, and tables. So they give you a tables. They put some numbers inside. They ask the student, okay, in this library, how many students borrow 2 books? How many students borrow 3 books? How many students borrow 4 books? So from the table, you must be able to read where the numbers and interpret it. Or they give you a pie chart and says that, oh, how many percent of the how many students actually like to eat vegetables, and so on. Okay. Then by P6, P5 they will not touch anything on statistic. By P6 they will start doing things like not graph, average, total value, and the number of data. So they will give you a table to show that, okay, so for example, same thing, a library, 10 students borrow 2 books, 20 students borrow 3 books. On average, how many books do the student borrow? So things like that. So they will have average. Okay. The other type of question that they like to ask is they give you a table, and somehow the character in the question will erase a certain number or did not write it properly. Then they ask you to guess what is that missing number in the table, and find the average and so on. So that's the typical type of statistics question. Okay. So with this, I've covered all the 10 topics. Okay. I hope it has been useful to you. I hope by now you should be able to see connections between how P4, P5, and P6 mathematics are built up. And with that, I thank you very much. Thank you and have a nice day.